In Chicago, you know that all sports rock. The Bears, Hawks, Bulls, Cubs, and Sox. Pick your favorite, you can choose. As long as the Packers lose. For everything you need to know, it's Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Bill's Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. This is your hosts, Alex and Sean. On this episode, we're going to be talking about Bears training camp underway. We're going to be talking baseball, a little basketball. But first, I'd like to thank our sponsor, the Rockford Ice Hogs. If you're not familiar with the Rockford Ice Hogs, they're the AHL minor league affiliate of the Chicago Blackhawks. What does that mean for you? You get to see the stars of tomorrow today at family-friendly, affordable prices. This Ice Hogs team this coming season is going to be awesome. It's going to have a lot of cool names that you're going to want to see. So make sure you head on over to icehogs.com. You get yourself a hat, shirt, jersey, tickets, and more. Tell them Swerski Sports sent you. Alex, how are you doing, my friend?
I am doing very, very well. It's good to have football activities back, and just kind of getting ready to talk about this because there's a lot to digest here as camp starts.
Yeah. I mean, I don't even know where to begin here. So we're 4 practices into this camp, and I haven't obviously seen anything because they haven't been open to the public yet. The first one that's open to the public, I believe, is this coming Friday. So everything has been second or third hand information. But from what I understand is sorry if you can hear like the thunderstorm behind me. It's just started.
Yeah, it's dark outside, man. It is really dark outside, and I know the Cubs game is delayed, so spooky stuff.
Yeah, luckily I went to last night's game. So
Yeah, no kidding. Jeez.
so yeah, from what I understand, Caleb Williams has taken big strides even from the mini camps with his understanding of the scheme, uh, with his cadence and his signal calling and um, some of the throws. It seems like he's getting more comfortable with the offense, which is really good.
It is good to hear, and we see a little bit of video. It's not very revealing, obviously, but from what you can see and what you hear, and this is what we've talked about since we've really gotten a good look at Caleb Williams, was the smoothness of the mechanics, the way he kind of just touches the ball and it goes flying out of his hand. It's not like, oh, he picks up the ball, flies out of hand. But when I mean touch, like just that really subtle, arm flick, and it's like he's just barely pressing the ball away from his hand, and yet it just this beautiful arc. And that looks particularly good on some of the short plays. And I don't want to pick on Justin Fields here, but and it's not just Justin Fields. We've seen how many times have we seen Bears quarterbacks really struggle with just the short game? That stuff's important. So if Caleb Williams can execute on that kind of stuff flawlessly, it's going to carry you a long way. Not everything about being a quarterback is about bombing the ball deep.
Is if you look, it's the stats, is the quarterback that gains the most yards and has the highest percentage of screen passes and short passes, it's Patrick Mahomes. So, that's an important part of winning is moving the ball, moving the chains. And it's not all on 18-yard, 23-yard, 40-yard pass plays. It's a little check down on first and 10. Oh, there's nothing there. Dump off, pick up 3 yards. Second and 7 is a whole lot easier to pick up than second and 10. And that
Yeah,
has,
tell Rex Grossman that.
I mean, I'm like you said, I'm not here to beat up Justin Fields, but that's something Justin Fields was really poor at is the short gains, the screen passes, the dump off passes. He just was atrocious at it. And that made everything he did that much harder. And so Justin Fields being, or I'm sorry, Caleb Williams being able to make these throws and with ease, and having a better receiving wide receiver or a running back in DeAndre Swift is just going to make that so much better.
Yeah, for sure. And the other thing you want to mention about Caleb Williams too is we were talking over the last few weeks about the deal. We were waiting for him and Roma Dunze to sign the contract. And kind of what I was optimistically looking at, both him, Williams, and Adunze signed as camp was starting, and we didn't really have any issues. We had a little bit of the delay in the Caleb Williams contract. It sounded like there was some dispute language, or not really language, but they didn't like the way that the franchise tag was set up, something along those lines. But whatever it was, at least that's what we heard. But everything was set up fine. They got the deal done. Doesn't seem like there's been any drama or weirdness to this all. And they're in camp and they're working hard. And I think that when you listen to what some of the other players have to say, they're impressed by Caleb Williams, and that defense is also making some plays too. And, when they're as pumped up as they are, when they're making plays against the first team offense, that's kind of part of that cliche where it kind of helps elevate the offense, and they're going to play hard. And, Caleb Williams is going to be making his adjustments too. And, this is a long, long process, but the fact that it's gotten off to the start that it has, it, doesn't mean anything in the long run. We'll see, but it just feels nice to hear some positivity from camp, if anything.
Yeah, and I want to touch a little more on the contract situation. Is from my understanding, it wasn't drama. It wasn't Caleb's camp. They wanted to go and see what boundaries they could push with the rookie boilerplate kind of contract, because under the collective bargaining agreement, there's a rookie wage scale. So essentially, you're slotted. You know how much you're going to get. The only thing there's a 4-year contract with a 5th year option for the team, and the only things that you can kind of argue are the offset language. So say you're cut, another team signs you. As a player, you don't want offset language because essentially then whatever you get paid by your new team, your old team doesn't pay you. So you want them to still pay you and get the money that the new team's going to give you. If you really feel like you're going to be awesome, it's a moot point because you're not going to get cut. But for Caleb Williams, apparently they were trying to find ways, because essentially the contract value is set in stone, set by the NFL. So they were like, okay, well, could we have this contract be given as a loan and with a loan forgiveness, so we won't pay taxes on it? Could it be, they were doing different ways so they're not paying taxes on it. And essentially the NFL is like, nope, that won't work. And he ended up signing it. So it's not a big deal. He signed his contract. Like we predicted, they signed it on the day that the rookie showed up. And oh, by the way, there was Hard Knocks cameras there. Surprise, surprise. So they sign
Shocking.
contracts, and they're there, and there's no issues.
Yeah, which is good to hear. I mean, you obviously looked into it deeper than I did, because we heard stuff about, franchise tagging, and, I don't, it was hard to know what was true, what wasn't. There was some speculation. Basically what I remember going down was, they announced Caleb Williams and Roma Dunze, at least the media did, and then the Bears announced Roma Dunze, but they didn't announce Caleb. And the next day, Mike Florio said, it's not signed yet. It should get signed. It will get signed. Don't worry, but it's not signed yet. And that's when kind of the speculation flied around. But, again, it's all moot at this point. And I was never really that worried that the deal was going to get done. What I am glad to see is that there's no stupid further rumors like, oh, he was acting like this, he was acting like that. You didn't hear anything stupid like that because just with the way that things have flied around Caleb Williams over the past few years, really, you almost expected kind of something dumb like that to come out, but it didn't. And now it's all about playing football. So
I
it's nice.
I just like that the Packers fans immediately got, karma because they were like, whoa, diva, well, contract. And then their quarterback's like, nah, I'm not practicing till I get a new deal. I love it. Love it.
Yeah. And I don't blame him for doing that.
I don't blame him
I
either.
I don't blame him at all. It is just kind of funny.
He took
And
he took a bridge deal for the benefit of the team, and he way outplayed that contract. Gave him a new one. He was trying to help the team in case he was bad and whatever. And he played well. He's got to get paid.
yeah, and I don't blame him one bit for that. He should. I would be surprised if he didn't. And correct me if I'm wrong, but JJ McCarthy, he didn't go sign for a while, I believe. So, there was Caleb Williams is not the only one that wasn't signed until we're getting to the camp area. I mean, obviously the Bears started off earlier, but still, it's not only Caleb Williams.
Yeah. Let's see. Who is anybody unsigned yet? JJ McCarthy definitely signed after. I think everybody is signed now.
I don't think there's anyone lingering, not that I know of, but the Vikings have been busy. They just gave their tackle a big extension. Obviously, bringing in McCarthy, getting him signed, and their other rookie that they drafted,
Dallas Turner, the edge
Dallas
rusher.
Turner. Right? Yes.
Yeah, Dallas I think signed a while ago, didn't he? Maybe he didn't. I thought there was only like 3 players after Caleb that to sign.
Yeah, I don't think he signed after Caleb or anything. I'm just saying, like there were a number of notable rookies in the NFC North, but everything seems to be all squared away.
Yeah, I think everybody signed, no holdouts. So, we're ready to play football now.
Yeah, and what I want to know is a few questions. Number one, how are the players feeling this year compared to years past? And I'm not making this about the quarterback. I'm making this about kind of the culture and the staff because you have some new faces on the coaching staff, but you still have Matt Eberflus as the head coach. And what did we see last year? We saw a very sloppy camp. We saw a very unprepared team in week one. I feel like, hopefully, I'm hoping that Matt Eberflus really learned from that. Because I don't know about you, but the camp last year, I was never feeling all that great. And we saw how unprepared they were in week one against Green Bay. So, what's the difference between last year and this year? Obviously, we just got off the ground with camp, but you got a new quarterback. You're going to the Hall of Fame game. You have a new offensive coordinator. You got some new personnel. Even though much of the team is the same, with the notable changes in very key spots, it's got to kind of feel like the beginning of something new. I mean, it has to be, especially with a new quarterback. So, I would love to be a fly on the wall, or in this case, Hard Knocks crew, and just pick up the vibe there because a vibe can only take you so long, but I do think that, getting off to that good start in camp and kind of having that, this is going to sound really cheesy, but pumped up feeling, that optimistic feeling, it's got to be a good sign of things. At least shows you that they feel confident in themselves and that something good can happen here.
All right, this is going to make me sound older than I am. Is they need to practice with pads, and they need to hit, and they need players to play in the preseason. that's how they're going to get ready. And I know it's the amount of padded practices and the amount that players play in the preseason has significantly gone down since I was younger. But if you look, Andy Reid doesn't, he has his players play. You got to have them play. You got to have your starters playing. You don't have to play the whole game. You have to play. But guys have to hit pad on pad to get ready for the season. You don't just come in and start walloping each other and you're good. You got to build that up. You got to build up that, that ability to hit and drive. So it's, uh, that's the way you do it is put pads on and hit somebody. And that's Matt Eberflus really didn't have guys participating enough in padded practices and not enough in the preseason. And it showed.
Yeah, and wasn't it Matt Nagy in 2019 where like he barely practiced with the offense at all, and we saw the result of that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll never
It's
forget
got,
that.
like, I'm not saying you got to beat guys up, but guys have to play to get ready.
Yeah,
You,
and
you
you have less time than you used to, even though the Bears do technically have the Hall of Fame game, so it is like old times, but in typical years, it's a little different.
yeah, you don't just go from several months off of, vacation and lounging around your house and whatever to just being back on there and hitting people. Like it doesn't work like that. You got to get your body ready. And if week one, if you've only done a handful of padded practices and you only played, a total of 15 snaps in preseason, you're not ready. You're not ready. And especially we have a rookie quarterback. We have a partially revamped offensive line. We got a new offensive coordinator. We've got some new wide receivers. Like you gotta start building that continuity.
Right. I mean, there's a lot of chemistry to build here, especially with a new quarterback. And, you know, I'll get into more details in a minute, but there's one area that I want to bring up on this Bears team that still has me a little baffled and a little baffled even with Ryan Poles is are we really, really, really feeling okay, or at least not concerned terribly about the fact that you're playing musical chairs at the center position? Because that's a pretty damn important position.
Um, I mean, we're still early on. We're 4 practices in. I think they'll probably start after the Hall of Fame game. I have a feeling somebody will rise to the top. Um, from my understand, the one thing that kind of has me wanting them to find some stability is Ryan Bates is a right-handed snapper,
Mm-hmm.
and Shelton Coleman, he's left-handed snapper.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, it's not terribly different, but for a rookie quarterback that's not really worked under center for a lot, that's a big difference. So, I would like them to find somebody, but I also don't want to rush it. I want to find the person who's going to do the best job. And honestly, I hope Ryan Bates winds up losing the job because I think he's a better option filling in for either tackle who either guard, because last year we needed a lot of backup guard help. And I think him coming in and playing any of the 3 interior spots, and if with an injury or something else, he's the best option.
That's fair. That's fair. I do wonder though, because they did trade for him, and unless I'm mistaken, didn't they initially want to sign Ryan Bates?
Yeah,
Didn't Ryan Poles want to go after him? And
he
I
did. He
mean,
actually did. He offered him a contract, and Buffalo was a restricted free agent. They
matched
matched the
it.
contract,
Yep.
so the Bears essentially negotiated the contract.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, so they spent a fifth round draft pick to get him. Uh, I I don't think that's worthy of making him be a starter. But Coleman Shelton has a number of years as a starter, so I think Ryan Bates being able to play to fill in for Tevin Jenkins, who's had injury concerns, Nate Davis, who last year had a lot of missed time, and then being able to fill in at center. I think that versatility in a guy that you trust is huge. And like I said, Coleman Shelton, I think will probably win this battle out, but they got to give him at least a game to sort of play and see how things go. But I would imagine after that game against the Texans, you'll start to see one get a lot more snaps than the other.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I wish that, right. I know it's early in camp. I know, but especially when you have a rookie quarterback, I just wish I felt more secure about it. Like, I feel really good about Darnell Wright. I feel good about Braxton Jones. I love Tevin Jenkins, but I just can't count on the guy playing 17 games. I think usually he plays like half those games, whatever it is, but he hasn't played a full season. When he's in there, he's great, but he's never in there for a full season. But when you got a rookie quarterback and kind of just a mystery at center right now, I think it does concern you a little bit, but we'll see how this camp unfolds. What I was going to ask is I have a little temperature check, feeling check about the Bears roster that I wanted to go through with you.
Sure.
Okay. So this is pretty straightforward. I did this on Twitter last week and I got a decent number of responses and it's good to talk this over, but I basically laid out every position at the high level. So quarterback, wide receiver, running back, tight end, offensive line, defensive line, linebacker, safety, corner, special teams. And I kind of give it like a grade, like good, okay, meh, great, things like that. So I figured you and I can go through and we can discuss how we feel about each of these areas.
Sure.
Okay. So let's start off with the quarterback. That I put as hopeful, finger cross emoji. Simple.
Yes. Hopeful. Definitely.
Wide receiver, I put great. I know that your depth might be a little sus, but your 1, 2, and 3 is looking to be DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, and Roma Dunze.
Yes. I'm pretty happy with that, especially considering you're seeing good things from Scott, and I've
Mm-hmm.
heard some good things about Velus Jones. So, somebody step up and take that number 4 spot. That would be huge.
If Scott is just solid as a number 4, then you're in really good shape.
Tyler Scott if he steps up, because last year was not a good year for him as a rookie.
No, it wasn't.
He got a case of the dropsies and just didn't look good. If he comes out and plays well, number 1, it'll make Keenan Allen expendable after this year, and 2, makes the wide receiver core even more solidified for this year. So
Yeah.
I'm pretty happy about the wide receiver core.
Yeah, it's hard not to right now. Okay, running back. This one I might have been a little harder on than I think other people are. I said, okay, meh. Now, I might be kind of lowballing them here, but I like DeAndre Swift. I think he's the right kind of running back to have with Caleb Williams, that shifty kind of guy that can pass catch. I think that's a good match. Khalil Herbert, I've liked him in the past. How good will he be going forward? I think he can be fine. His first few years, I thought you saw some good things. Last year, he had that injury, and then it kind of took him a while to get back to where we were because I don't know about you, but it seemed like after the injury, when he initially came back, he was kind of a step or two behind. And hopefully that'll all be mended out because if it is, then yeah, that's a pretty solid number two back, all things considering. But we'll see. I do like him. Roshan Johnson's the one where I just don't know if he's anything more than a guy. I just don't know. Last year, I didn't see anything that really blew me away. I know he's going to be your third back, and I know it was only his rookie year, so maybe he exceeds that expectation for me. But I know there's people that put a decent amount of stock in him. I just don't know if I'm ready to do that yet.
Um, I'm not saying you're wrong, but I I don't give them like a vote of confidence like I do with the wide receivers.
Right.
But I also think they're better than average. They're like average plus. Um, the the thing is, there's no bell cow back. You don't have a guy that's just going to carry the load when you need somebody to carry the load.
You don't have a game changer.
DeAndre Swift is great. He's going to expand that short passing game, screen game uh, situation, and that's important, especially with a rookie quarterback. So that's leaving, the three-headed monster of Swift, Herbert, and Roshan Johnson to rotate and carry those, 25 touch or rushes in a game. And I just, are you going to go with the hot hand? I know other teams have gone with the hot hand and it's worked. I just think that to be a championship team, you need one guy to step up. And I'm not saying nobody will step up. I just don't know who it's going to be. So I'm I'm more optimistic than I was last year. But I just think that somebody's Roshan Johnson or Khalil Herbert's got to step up and be the dude carrying it between the tackles.
Yeah, I think that's well said. I think that's very well said because as good as Swift can be, let's be real, he's not Saquon Barkley, a fully healthy Saquon Barkley, or a Joe Mixon, or remember how good Gurley was a few years ago. Obviously, not an Adrian Peterson by any means. I'm not. Unfair for me to compare really anybody to him, but you look at some of the better running backs now or over the past few years, you don't really have a back quite at that level. But like I said, I'm not saying this is bad by any means. It's just the other thing too is compare our running game to the other running games in the NFC North and you see what the Lions have and their asset not only is their running backs but their offensive line too. That is a big part of the running game and the Lions are really good on both those levels, the backs and the blocking. And then obviously Aaron Jones went from the Packers to the Vikings, and he still should be pretty darn good. The Packers have revitalized their running back core. They've drafted new guys, so you got a lot of good ground game in the NFC North, and Caleb Williams can move, but he's not Justin Fields on the ground. So not that we want to say that's part of the running back core, but just the ground game as a whole. Like I said, I don't think it's bad. I just don't think it's spectacular.
Yeah, and there's room for somebody to step up. If you get offensive line healthy and playing with continuity, that's going to make it easier for a running back to be successful. Having a good passing game is going to make it easier for a running back to be successful. So there is opportunity for somebody to step up and be good, especially considering that I believe this is a contract year for Khalil Herbert. So he's going to be trying everything. So I'm not dissatisfied with their running back core. I'm not overjoyed. Had we brought in Derrick Henry and with DeAndre Swift, I would have been like, this is a running back room that I can really enjoy. Thunder and lightning here.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, what's next group?
Tight end, I'm going to say good because last year I saw some of the strides I wanted to see with Cole Kmet. He's, tight end one by far. So I feel pretty good there. And, it's kind of amazing to think that Cole Kmet has been here several years. Like sometimes in my mind, I feel like, oh yeah, he's been here like what, 2 years? It's like, no, he's been there a few more years than that. But
I think this is his fifth year, I believe.
because 2020 was his first year.
Okay, so yeah. Um, yeah, this is his fifth year. So yeah.
Isn't that hard to believe?
Um, little bit until I like, oh yeah, he got a contract extension in during the season, or right before the season last year, or during the season. So I was like, okay, so that would have been during his fourth year of his rookie deal. So yeah, that makes sense.
It
But
just doesn't
when
feel
you
like it to me. That maybe it's just me.
when you're thinking about the numbers and like the player on the field, no, but I'm able to attach the contract so that it was like a grounding.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. But you're gonna have tight end one, Cole Kmet, then Everett, and
I
then
like
Mercedes
I like
Lewis.
Gerald Everett. I think he's going to shock a lot of people, and you know how I feel about Mercedes Lewis.
Yes.
Like I am half tempted to go get a Mercedes because I can't get a Caleb Williams jersey. So I'm half tempted to get a Mercedes Lewis jersey because I feel like at this point in his career that you're okay to get a jersey because he is who he is.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's one of those things where you could walk around with a Mercedes Lewis jersey and people will kind of do that half laughing nod, like, oh, look at that, a Mercedes Lewis jersey. It's not like, oh, you bought a Mercedes Lewis jersey and now he's a complete bust. The dude's been in the league, what, how long?
Like
Almost
20
20 years.
almost 20 years. So I think it's safe to say that his career is pretty defined. Um,
I would
so
say so.
so
Yes.
I love Mercedes Lewis. So I'm 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 as happy as you can be with a tight end core with this tight end core.
Yeah, I think so too. So, whatever happened to Robert Tunyon?
Didn't he go to the Vikings?
Did he?
I
I
think yeah,
don't
he was
even
a,
know.
he was a free agent. I think he went with the Vikings. Um,
I mean, all I'll be able to think about in his Bears tenure was that dropped pass in Cleveland.
yep, he signed with the Minnesota Vikings.
So he went from the Packers to the Bears to the Vikings.
She's got to go to the Lions next and
Ex
complete the division run.
I was going to say, yeah, that would be pretty funny. Okay, so next, we already kind of talked about it. It's O-line. I said meh. Center and depth are a bit concerning, though there are the areas I liked that I mentioned before. I mentioned how much, obviously, we saw some really good things. We like Darnell Wright. Will Nate Davis play this year? Hopefully, we'll get more out of Nate Davis. I think he's talented enough to be a solid guy when he plays. Tevin Jenkins, please stay healthy, just healthy enough. Braxton Jones, I think is kind of underrated. I think he's a
I,
very quietly solid dude.
yeah, I think so too. And I wonder. So they drafted Karan Amagaji, who's probably going to get shorted this year. So don't be surprised if he winds up on the IR and misses the whole season. Just putting that out there because he's a really talented guy with a lot of high upside, but he's going to need some work at this level. But I wonder because he's got left tackle written all over him, but Braxton Jones has been pretty good, and so I don't know if the plan is to kick one of them inside and not re-sign Tevin Jenkins, or move Tevin back to the right side, move on from Nate Davis, and then kick one of them inside onto the left guard spot. But that's a good problem to have too many guys and trying to fit where you put them. So I don't want to talk because any of these position groups, you can be like, oh, well, injuries, could change this. I do want to
Goes for
mention
anywhere.
that. I do want to mention that though with this offensive line because of the injury histories.
Yes.
Is Braxton Jones didn't miss a game in his career until he got that neck injury last year. Tevin Jenkins has been a kind of a mess as far as injuries. You had a disaster of a center position last year. Nate Davis missed a lot of time between injuries and family issues. And you had no depth last year. This year, I think their depth is improved. You're never going to have a great offensive line with tons of depth. It's just with the nature of a hard salary cap, it's just a
Look at what the Vikings just paid their O lineman today. Look how expensive that gets.
yeah. So if the starters stay healthy or have minimal injuries, I think they could be decent. In fact, I could say they would be above average, like top 12, 13. I think they can if they stay healthy
That's
because,
just such a big if.
yeah, because Darnell Wright is really good.
He's
Nate,
very good.
if you get the Nate Davis that played in Tennessee next to him, that's a pretty good right side. Tevin Jenkins, we know he plays at a Pro Bowl level when he's healthy. Braxton Jones, the expectation is usually playing from a small school against, Division II or whatever he was. It's that third year when you really solidify who you are. He's going into his third year and he's been pretty good. So the expectation is he'll be better. And you can't be any worse at center. So as long as you stay healthy, it's really that continuity is more important than individual players. That continuity is what does it. If these guys can stay healthy and play, oh, hey, we just played 10 straight games together as a unit, it gets so much better. They've added some veterans to the depth, and I don't think that oh my God, Larry Borum is going to make the squad. I don't think he's going to. I don't between his salary and just the talent they added in depth, and I don't think he's going to make it. So I'm cautiously, I don't want to say optimistic. I want to say cautiously, what's a one level down of optimistic or super duper cautious optimistic? Somewhere in there where I see the promise in there. I'm holding my breath that it's going to work out with health.
I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying. It's the uncertainty is always just nerve-wracking, but I do think fully healthy, we can be good enough. I mean, you don't have to be a top five line, but you just can't be a disaster like we saw in the early Jay Cutler years or what we saw the first few years of Justin Fields. That isn't going to win you any games. That's just going to get your quarterback banged up. So we don't really want to see that. And, again, it's more than just protecting your passer or blocking for your runners, but it's knowing your assignments, having the chemistry in place. And when you have a rookie quarterback back there, that's really a big part of what he's trying to build up here, Caleb Williams. It's more than just reading a secondary or, making your checkdowns. You got to be in sync with your offensive line. And the more that they're healthy, like you said, the easier it will be for Caleb Williams so they can potentially get into a rhythm. So let's hope for the best there. Moving on to the other.
Can I say one more thing about the offensive line?
Of course.
Is kind of an unspoken thing. Is obviously you want them to protect our rookie quarterback, our number one pick, our hopefully savior. You want them to save him and protect him. But there's two things that I really need this offensive line to be good enough to do. One, sustain drives. So you keep the defense fresh. Because this defense, I think, is going to be real good. You keep that defense fresh by sustaining drives and then be good enough that when you have a lead in the fourth quarter, you can lean on that offensive line to grind it out and run out the clock. That's going to be the true test of what this offensive line is. Because if you can sustain drives, even if you're not necessarily putting points up, but flip field position, make, have a drive that goes 6 minutes, get that defense fresh. So when they go out there, the other team has a long field to go on, and the Bears can really pin their ears back and play tough. And then when they get a lead in the fourth quarter, you can hold that lead. You're not worried about the other team making these big long drives, getting the ball back quickly, or giving up sacks when you're trying to run a clock out and you're giving up a sack and having to punt with only running 13 seconds off. Those are the things that you can't have, and those are the things I'm looking for in this offensive line is establishing themselves to better the defense.
I think that's very well said. I mean, especially the part where you mentioned running out the clock late in games. There's another aspect to that too. Got to be disciplined. You got to play good fundamental football. Can't be making dumb mistakes, bad penalties.
Yep.
That's always very, very important.
You can overcome a false start because you don't lose your down. It's only 5 yards. Holdings and sacks, those are real tough to overcome.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So shall we move on to the other side of the trenches?
Yes.
The defensive line. So I say decent that could use a little more. And I think we've talked about that a number of times on the show where we do want more guys that could get to the quarterback. But boy, Montez Sweat is a game changer. He really, really is. And the fact that you have him on that defensive line elevates everything. He's that good of a player. And I'm going to say this too. I think Gervon Dexter is going to do some good things. I am on that train. I am buying that stock.
Yeah, Gervon Dexter, I think he showed a lot at the end of the season. And we talked about that he at Florida was asked to do something different than the Bears asked him to do. And it took him a minute to learn exactly how to do that, to be able to come off the ball quick and instead of step back and take on double teams and be like a disruptor. I mean, a clogger rather than a disruptor. And you saw really good flashes, and he came into camp this year in such better shape, just noticeably better shape. And I think that's going to be important. What I see about this defensive line, I have concerns now because I'm not in the room and I haven't seen them play yet. I see a path where the defensive line could be perfectly fine. If Gervon Dexter steps up and is the dude that we think he is, that'll be huge.
Mm-hmm.
Austin Booker is a guy that is raw, but I think he's a good pass rusher. If you can make him a situational guy and just let him go, don't worry about having to play the run versus the pass. Have him out there just in pass rush situations. I think he can be productive. The key for me is going to be DeMarcus Walker. And he did not play that well last year. Not awful, just not well. And I heard him talk during training camp, and he said that even at his healthiest last year, he was playing at like 75%.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how true that is. I can't speak for it. I can only take the man's word at it. But if that's the case and he's 100% now, um, that's that's a good thing. You know, I would love for them to add somebody else,
Me
but
too.
there's a very limited somebody else's out there.
Yes, there is. You know what there was a guy I was kind of high on when he first came here, and it didn't come to fruition, but he's still on the team. Is I was really hoping Dominic Robinson would be a thing. Because if you remember his debut in that monsoon game against the 49ers, you saw him do some good things, and then he kind of faded to the fact where you're like, oh, I kind of forgot he was on the team. But I'm not really counting on him to light up the sheet. I wish we could get a little more from him.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I was um I was hopeful and he just hasn't shown me anything. Um and so I will he will he even make this team?
Uh,
If he does, this is his last shot you know, if he doesn't
oh yeah, it's year
perform.
3.
Um but you know, when I say there was limited options for you to bring in, the two last were uh, a familiar face from last year and Emmanuel Ogba today signed with the Dolphins.
So you got Yannick Ngakoue is basically what you're
That's
saying.
Yannick Ngakoue is like the guy left. Now, if he were to sign with the Bears for um, the contract that Emmanuel Ogba signed for, 1 year, $5 million, I would say sign him up.
Yeah, it's pennies.
But if he's trying to get like $12 million a year, uh, then
Yeah, no.
I'm not I'm not having it.
Yeah, that'd be a no for me, son. That's a no for me, dog. But if you brought him back cheap, like what you just said, between like $5-6 million for 1 year, okay, that leaves you with plenty of flexibility still. And you're adding a guy who knows the team, knows the system, and he got hurt last year. And I know that he isn't traditionally a good run blocker, but it's funny. I felt like he was actually decent at run blocking last year. He wasn't getting to the quarterback before he got hurt, but ultimately the big thing that we would want from a guy like him is getting to the quarterback, because Montez Sweat can, but teams are going to know to double team him in certain situations. So it would
Yeah,
just be nice to have more.
they're going to scheme against Montez. So run plays either directly at him to try to negate it, rolling him out to the other side, uh, screen, passes to where the spot he is, double teams, chipping him with, there's a lot of things they're going to do to try to negate him, and somebody's got to step up. Just somebody has to. And I don't know if they're going to bring in Ngakwe,
I don't
but
either. I don't
nobody
know.
else has. And I would say it's 50-50 right now.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they did. I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't. It seems like Ryan Poles isn't the one to just rush in and jump in, but if he's still available and the stock goes down and down and you can get him at even fairer price, and if he sees fit that he's good enough to play, then yeah, maybe he does jump on him. But if he doesn't see fit, he's not going to. Just knowing what Ryan Poles has been overall, he took one swing on a wide receiver that didn't miss, but overall he's really done his homework and due diligence, I think, on a lot of moves like this before just jumping on them.
Yeah, and also you're not rushing the clock about signing Yannick Ngakoue
No.
because it's, you want to get him in camp to get in condition, but he doesn't need to learn the playbook. He played with your defensive coordinator last year. So you know him, he knows this system, and you trust that he's going to come in and know it. It's just getting him in playing shape. So you've got a couple weeks before you need to bring him in. And I think that's perfectly fine. So you're not rushing anything if you're the Bears. It's if you're on the fence whether you need him, then might as well just let that price drop.
Yeah, for sure. Agreed. Okay,
But
so
but just one more thing is as
mhm.
much as I can say I can see a pathway for this defensive line to be good, I could see a pathway for this defensive line to be dog turd tacos.
Sure.
If Javon Dexter doesn't take that step forward, your depth in the center or in the middle of the defensive line isn't quite there. If you're not getting pressure outside Montez Sweat, just that's going to put a lot of pressure on your linebackers and your defensive backs.
Yeah, that's fair. Shall we move on to the next one?
Yep.
Linebackers. I'm going to say good. I think TJ Edwards was very, very good last year, and I'd say quietly good. He's not the guy that's going to be stripping the ball away, taking the ball away, but he's one of the better tacklers in the National Football League. He was really good in Philadelphia. He was good with the Bears in his first year last year. People could say Tremaine Edmonds was somewhat overpaid, but I think overall you got decent production from him. Sanborn, I like him, sneaky good local kid. You got Noah Sewell. So, I feel pretty good about what we have. Because I really do think TJ Edwards doesn't get the flowers that he deserves. He's a darn good linebacker. He's not going to show up on the ESPN top 10 highlight reel take. He's not going to make the Brian Urlacher type plays, but he's really good. And you got him, you paid for him in free agency and you saw what Roquan Smith is now getting, and you're like, okay, I think we're getting pretty good value with TJ Edwards here.
I think so. And you saw some good things at the later in the season from Tremaine Edmonds.
Mm-hmm.
I think I think your linebacker core is going to be pretty good. There's depth there. You've got you're primarily going to be playing two linebackers because you'll be in nickel a lot. So your two starters are really good. Your primary backup is extraordinarily underrated, and is going to get a nice payday when his next contract is due. So I'm pretty happy with the linebacking core. I can't complain anything about that.
Yeah, I mean, because you saw Tremaine Edmonds in the last few, he took the ball away. He was intercepting the ball, getting turnovers. So that was really nice to see towards the end of the year. He saw it against the Lions. I believe, didn't he have the pick six against Cleveland?
I don't remember.
Because he made some plays, especially towards the end. So I was really, really happy to see kind of how that progressed. And, he's a veteran linebacker. He's been around, and you feel like at the end of the day, he's going to give you the production that you want.
Yeah, agreed.
I'm going to stick with the good rating when I say safety. Obviously, Jaquan Brisker is the guy. He's the head, so to speak, of this safety core. Eddie Jackson's gone. You have Jaquan Brisker as the main face. So I feel like you're
Kevin Byard is a baller, and
Kevin Byard is a good addition. Yes,
and he apparently has looked good in training camp and has been a vocal leader. I,
mm-hmm.
I'm pretty excited about this safety group, to be honest with you. I don't I don't think they have very good depth. I don't like the depth there, but the two starters I'm pretty excited about.
Yeah, because then you go to Jonathan Owens and Elijah Hicks, and It's nothing to write home about there, but
I, when they drafted Elijah Hicks, I watched his film at Cal, and I was really impressed. I was like, wow, I think this guy could be good, and he hasn't yet, and he's still young, but uh, I I need him to progress. But I saw a lot of good things at a big time college program, so he's got that in him. It just he's gonna have to go there and quickly Jonathan Owens will not be in training camp for a bit because his wife will be competing for a bunch of gold medals in Paris.
yes, she will be. So good luck to Simone Biles.
Yep, Simone Biles. I hope she wins it all. And
Hell
uh
yeah.
and Jonathan Owens comes back a happy man with his gold medal winning wife in tow.
Hell yeah. Now, I'm going to move on to this next category, and I really, really like this category, and that's cornerback. Not Jaquan Brisker, Jalen Johnson, Kyler Gordon, and I'm really high on the Tyreek Stevenson train. I like that dude.
Oh, me too. I love him. Love him. I mean, there's a bunch of good cornerbacks on this team that I'm very excited about. Obviously we have Jalen Johnson, who's a top 10 corner in football, maybe higher. Um, Kyler Gordon might be the best nickel in football, and Tyreek Stevenson is just he's a baller. Terrell Smith played really well. It was a neck and neck who was going to get the playing time between those two last year. Terrell Smith is a good player. I like Jalen Jones as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so you've got some ballers there at cornerback, and you've got a bunch of them. That arguably, I know this is gonna be blasphemy for all the people that are like, what about wide receivers? The cornerbacks could be the best position group on this team.
I think other people wouldn't judge you for saying that. I mean, just if Tyreek Stevenson is that dude and you get the Jalen Johnson you've been getting even after the payday, and you have Kyler Gordon doing what he's doing, that's pretty damn good.
And the reason I say that is high end, like, okay, you've got three studs at wide receiver, but the depth drops off considerably. Your depth, it it goes down with your cornerbacks, but it doesn't drop. It just steps down gradually. So
No, you're right.
I think your depth, if you are considering depth in there, depth at cornerback is far greater than your depth at wide receiver. Keenan Allen goes down, uh, your wide receiver core you go, uh-oh, you know, we're we're not the same wide receiver core. Jalen Johnson went down last year, and you didn't miss too much of a beat with those cornerbacks.
No, you didn't. And one thing I will say about the secondary as a whole, throughout this entire rebuild, it's the area of the defense I always felt best about because even in 2022, when they stripped the team to the studs, you had rookie Kyler Gordon and Jaquan Brisker on the team, and you saw them make plays out there. And you're like, well, we can't stop the run for shit, and we can't even breathe on the opposing quarterback, but our secondary can make some plays. And now that you've seasoned Jaquan Brisker and Kyler Gordon a bit, and Jalen Johnson is the experienced veteran, and with the ceiling of Tyreek Stevenson, and you mentioned Byard too, you like what he could bring. There's a lot to like. There's a lot to like, and I hope that it stays healthy because it has the potential to do some good things.
Agreed. I absolutely agree.
So the last thing I have, feeling very good about this as well, is your special teams. I feel good about Cairo Santos, our kicker. I think that the change in the rules for kickoffs are going to be very interesting. They brought back Dante Pettis, and you kind of can't help but wonder if he's going to be part of that.
I think I honestly, he's a safety net. He's a veteran. He can return punts. You feel confident. Uh, he's against the behind the eight ball to make this roster, to be honest. Um, if nobody steps up to be a punt returner, maybe that's really the way he's going to be on this roster. But he's playing for the league minimum or veteran minimum. And
He's
you
been
know
here before. He
he's been here
knows.
before. He knows like these coaches, and you um you know what to expect out of him as a veteran. He's inexpensive, and you know what his ceiling and floor are. He's a known commodity. So if you come into this training camp and you're like, like let's just say, I don't even know who somebody else is bad, really high ups and really low downs, and you feel not confident. You know what Dante Pettis is. As long as you're not putting him out there on, 3rd and 10 to try to
Oh
get your
no, of
first out,
course not.
he's a special teams guy, and you don't keep all 6 wide receiver spots for your wide receiver play. You need 1 or 2 of those to be special teamers.
Right. Now, I haven't mentioned him yet. We have to talk about the crocodile punter.
Um, everything I've seen is looked awesome. He looks like a grown ass man punting.
The dude's leg is like when he punts the ball, it's like a cannon. And that proves very valuable, especially late in the season on a snowy, windy afternoon at Soldier Field.
And I've heard enough of a rumbling that he could very well do kickoffs.
Hey, that's fine.
You save Cairo Santos for field goals, and Tory Taylor is your punter and your kickoff specialist. Other teams have done it. Cairo Santos is a really good kicker, but he doesn't have the strongest leg on kickoffs. Not that it's weak, it's just not a powerful leg. Tory Taylor's got like a howitzer for a leg.
I would love to see them just for fun. If there's a game where they're blowing an opponent out and they score a touchdown, I would love to just say, hey, Tory Taylor, punt the extra point.
I'm just excited to see him in a game. I want to see him run somebody down and tackle him in preseason. I don't want to see that in the regular season, but preseason, I don't mind if somebody gets a long punt return and he has to chase him down and make the tackle.
They should make that kid a linebacker too.
I heard he was going to be the next Bears great middle linebacker.
I remember that Dick Butkus guy. Kind of reminds me of him, except he's an Aussie.
He's like an Australia Dick Butkus. That's definitely what my friend Fritz told me.
Hey, dear Mullion Hall.
Mully, I don't like that you haven't been talking enough about Tory Taylor and his abilities to play linebacker for the Bears.
Here's the thing. I'm going to be driving into work one day. I'm going to be listening to Mullion Hall on my way. I'm going to hear that exact call and be like, damn it, Sean.
So my best friend and I, we used to have we would call into the score all the time as Fritz and Smitty, and with our Chicago accents. And we would call in all the time to Jiggets and North. And and a lot of times if we didn't get a call in, we would send a fax in back when you could send faxes in, and they would read our faxes on the air. They'd be like, we really like what this Rex Grossman kid can do. Fritz and Smitty from the West Side.
Oh my God, that's hilarious. That is hilarious. And I mean, first of all, you said 2 key things right there. You said North and Dan Jiggets, and you said a fax machine. So What? It sounds like you're talking from the Cretaceous period when you say that.
This would have been like 96, 97.
Wow. I would have been a little kid.
Uh,
Does Dan Jiggets do anything anymore? I haven't, because
I don't
I
know.
I really liked Dan Jiggets. Really liked him. I remember when he did Bears postgame show on remember the old Comcast Sportsnet postgame show that they used to have?
Yeah.
Dan Jiggets was part of that panel, and I was always a big fan of Dan Jiggets. He was something about Dan Jiggets always just like you see him and he just was the epitome of Chicago sports.
His daughter's a real looker. Lauren Jiggets.
I have to look.
She is a gorgeous young lady. I don't know if she's that young, but she is gorgeous. Mhm.
So anyway, that was the exercise I wanted to do.
Yeah. So now I'm looking. What was the years of Jiggets and North? And God, who was Terry Boers with?
Before Bernstein, that was a little before my time listening. Oh, was it what's his who am I thinking of? The name's on the tip of my tongue. He was there for a while, gone, came back for a little while, left again. I don't know why I'm completely blanking on his name. I know I shouldn't be.
Yeah, I can't remember who.
It wasn't Brian Hanley, was it? I don't think
No,
so.
It was Mully with him.
Right, Mully was with Hanley.
Uh,
Right, right.
God, I will remember it as soon as we.
I know, me too. I don't know why I'm completely blanking on it. I should know who I'm talking about. I'm quite embarrassed, actually. Why I'm completely drawing on his name. Anyway,
Um,
fax machine. My goodness. The fact that you can literally just text in or tweet at somebody or like comment on a live stream. Back then, you had phone calls and faxes. What kind of
you could
primitive
just
technology was that?
you could fax in, and not everybody had a fax machine, so it made it so much. Everybody's got a phone now. You can do the text line. Not everybody had the um. Not everybody had a fax machine that you could just use for whatever stupid reasons.
I don't think I've ever used one.
There you go.
Because they were kind of, I mean, they were on their way out as I was growing up. Because when I got into high school, that's when smartphones became a thing.
Oh, you and your smartphones.
Yeah, we didn't use tin cans and string.
Oh, God, who was with Terry Boers?
Like, I want to say who it was. The name is on my tongue, but I feel so stupid. I can't remember his name. And he was around a while. Now, the Dan Jiggett
Was
stays
it
on the
was it
score.
was it Dan McNeil?
That's who I'm thinking of.
I
Was it
want to.
McNeil?
Yeah, I think it was McNeil and Boers.
Oh, yeah. McNeil. Thank you. I can't believe I
So
blanked
the
on that name.
the score had Dan McNeil and Mike North at the same time.
Ooh, ooh.
Yeah, it was McNeil and Boers.
Yeah, right.
Oh, God, there was. But yeah, Jiggets and North would read our stupid faxes. We would sometimes draw pictures on the fax and just fax it in. Just whatever.
Stick figure throwing football.
Uh, Fritz and Smitty. The first time we heard them say Fritz and Smitty on the we got Fritz and Smitty on the fax line.
Oh, that's funny. That's funny.
Oh my god. Uh, yeah. So I'm excited about the Bears, and I've got my tickets secured for training camp in August.
Oh, good, good.
I think it's August 13th. I got tickets. Did you score tickets?
No, no, I didn't.
Yeah. See,
I'm disappointed because they're not having the family festival at Soldier Field this year. I go every year.
are they having it?
I don't think they are.
Oh, that's a bummer.
I thought I heard they weren't having it. And every time I tried to check, it like was still the 2023 Family Fest. Because like I'm going on right now on chicagobears.com. Yeah, the Chicago Bears will not be hosting Family Fest this season as they prepare to play in the Pro Football Hall of Fame game.
Hmm. Well,
Sucks, but I'm not surprised.
but yeah, so I got my tickets, and it's funny because my wife was like, "Oh, that's I wanted to go take you there for uh, a birthday gift." I'm like, "Okay." So I was like, "They're gonna go quick." So she's like, "I found my password for Ticketmaster, and I set an alarm, and I ended up logging in and getting them myself." And she's like, "Oh, I've got them in my cart," and I was like, just release them." And then somebody I work with was like, "I tried, and they were all sold out by the time I got in there." And I was like, "Oh, it sucks." I'm like, "I wish my wife would have got those three, and then you could have just taken them."
Hmm.
But it'll be fun.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I saw that they put like canopies over the seating now. So it's like you're in the shade. So it looks more like a grandstand than just like bleachers.
Oh, thank God. I remember the first year I went to training camp um, in Bourbonnais, and I the first time I ever went was as media, and you see like uh, Brad Biggs, and you see some of these other guys, and they've got these big straw hats and with like things that flaps that hang down over their neck and sunscreen and water. And I'm like, I'm just there going, "Hey, everybody." I got so sunburned, and I was so miserable by the end of it because I was tired and hot and thirsty. And I don't know if you've ever went to Bourbonnais, but you know what they have like right across the street from the Bourbonnais facility? Bozo's hot dogs. And I'm vegetarian, but I went into, I was like, "Oh my God, this is a blast from the past." So I went into Bozo's hot dogs, and I bought like 3 pops, and I drank them real quick because I was so thirsty and so sunburned.
Yeah. So my family and I, we went to Bourbonnais back in 2005 when I was a kid, and it was fun, and it was a night scrimmage, so we weren't in the burning sun, which was kind of nice. And there was something kind of pure about Bourbonnais where they looked like a bunch of like when the players were arriving, they looked like a bunch of college students arriving to their dorms to start the year. They had the big laundry baskets full of clothes and the water bottles and the TVs and the radios and the big, the big stuff that they would keep at the campus. And now it's like, oh, just driving to work at Hallis Hall in our very expensive cars, and it's just, you go to work like it's a normal day. There was something about those Bourbonnais days, seeing all the players arrive like they were going to college.
And because they stayed in dorms.
Yeah. The Bears used to be tough. They used to stay in dorms. They need to add more toughness.
You remember you'd watch them come in carrying TVs and VCRs.
Yeah. Yeah, and video games and shit.
Oh, the olden days. All right.
I-
Should we? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I'm just saying, times have really changed.
They really have the olden days. All right. Should we move on to something else here?
Yeah. So, did you hear the breaking news this morning?
No.
So, apparently, the Reinsdorf family and the Wirtz family have worked together to basically redevelop the entire area around the United Center.
You know, I heard something about that, but I didn't know what they were talking about. Uh, and I haven't had a chance to look into it. So they're going to redevelop that whole area.
Yeah, so let me kind of read you what's been released here because it's kind of interesting, kind of cool. So the United Center joint venture, which is the Reinsdorfs and the Wirtz, alongside city and community leaders, unveil the 1901 project, a transformative $7 billion private investment surrounding the iconic area on Chicago's west side. And you're going to see housing units go up. You're going to see a parking facility. You're going to see businesses. You're going to see entertainment. It's going to be a mass redevelopment around that entire area. So some of those just blank parking lots and some of the other property. Because if you remember, Reinsdorf had been spending time buying up property around the United Center. And a lot of this sounds like it's going to be out of their pocket privately funded, they say. And sure, you might get some tax money to help with some of the, you know, infrastructure around it. You know, you need to fix some ramps, you need to get some, improve some ways of the logistics around the area with this new project. But this is going to be a decade long, multi phase development, housing, retail, entertainment, and public open space. 55 plus acres of privately owned land is going to go into all of this. This is a
Huh.
big deal.
I wonder if a baseball stadium will go in there.
Nothing about that yet.
So are they going to make United Center not be a crumbling mess?
Hopefully, I mean, hopefully some of that is going to go into the United Center itself because
Because
there are
it
areas
needs
of the
it needs
United
a lot of
Center.
work.
Yes, there are areas of the United Center that need a facelift, and let's remember it's a 30 plus year old building now. And for an indoor sports arena, indoor sports arenas can get outdated very, very quickly.
Yeah, I mean it's I don't know if you remember last year when there was like water rushing from the ceiling, flooding one of the escalators.
Yeah, I remember
Like
that.
there's a lot of work that needs to be done. I mean, cosmetic wise, what it is. Um, you could put on some additions on there to make, like you did with Wrigley Field, where you have like these, clubs or whatever that are just add-ons to the building if you have the
Which they've
land.
already kind of done over the
Yeah.
years.
Um, especially with the where they put the new team store and they enclosed that made an atrium to enclose the Jordan statue. Uh,
Some new bars and restaurants they've added.
yeah, so there's, you know, but they've got to do some actual work on that building to bring it bring it up. And I don't think they need to tear it down and build a new stadium by any
No,
stretch, but um, there's work that needs to be done on it.
absolutely. And I think you can probably justifiably say, hey, we should get new seats, actual new seats into the United Center
That's
with
true.
cup holders.
Yeah, those, and then I don't know, maybe make the 300 seats not so steep. Like I get like uh altitude sickness being up in the 300 section.
You just see Sean tumbling down the aisle.
Oh my god, I'm so worried that's going to happen. That's why I prefer like standing room. So if I have like a 300 seat, I just go to the standing room section and watch from there because I'm like I'm not going to fall down any stairs from here.
There was once a time where it was a few years ago when the Blackhawks were really bad, and obviously before Connor Bedard, and it was a really bad game against Vancouver, and I got these tickets last minute just because I wanted to go, and it was the last seating row in the 300 level, the very last row. And the game was terrible. I was sitting up there, so I kind of just wandered around the standing room only section. And for 90% of the games I've ever attended at the United Center, which is quite a bit, I sat in the 300 level, but I never actually went all the way up to the standing room section in the 300 level. So I was kind of walking around like, huh, I didn't know there was a concession stand all the way up here.
Yep.
And there were some areas that were kind of spacious.
Yeah, I prefer the standing room to the back end of the 300 sections.
Because it really goes up there.
It really does. And those seats are not adult size, and you need the cup holders, and there's no leg room because I'm tall. So yeah, hopefully they get a facelift in there.
Yeah, and I mean, you have to eventually. Like I said, arenas can age very quickly. We've seen that. I mean, look at the average lifespan of an indoor arena. It's not very long. Obviously, you'll have some that will go through the major renovations, like Madison Square Garden. That's a historic building. But a few decades and you're kind of already obsolete as an indoor arena, and it usually requires notable renovations. And one example nearby is, you remember the old Bradley Center up in Milwaukee that was built in the late 80s. All things considering, not that old, but it was already way outdated. Now, the United Center is bigger and I think more lavish than the Bradley Center ever was, but still, it goes to show how quickly a stadium can be outdated. And, there comes that time where you're going to have to do a revamp. And from everything you've heard from the Reinsdorfs and the Wirtz and everything that goes along with the projects they've done, there is no plan whatsoever to replace the United Center anytime soon. So you're going to have to make some moves to, help maintain and update things.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, when you build an indoor stadium, you have to. I'm not going to say future proof it because that's just not possible, but you have to think of the future in mind. You know, what can we do to add on to this or improve this come 15 years down the road, 30 years down the road, to keep it up to date, because their buildings are expensive and they just keep getting more expensive, and you want to get as much life as you can out of a stadium. So you have to consider these things, like, okay, could we add on bars and restaurants? Can we add on, can we take out the seats and put new seatings in, if without completely gutting and taking out a wall or something. It's you've got to consider these things.
Yeah, you do. You do. And remember, too, the United Center is a year-round arena. Obviously, it's most used in the winter because you have two teams playing there, but you'll have concerts, you'll have events, you might have trade shows and other things going on at the United Center. And, that's why if you built this kind of district around there, is you can further help bring more events to the Chicago West Side. You can get some of those people going to music concerts or movies or comedy clubs or something like that. You can build that within this district and you can have that all year long. And there are things going on all year long at the United Center. So you want to take advantage of that.
Because you will have enough space to put like a parking garage and ample
Mm-hmm.
parking. You're very close to the Blue Line L. You've got a built-in group of people with money in all of the hospitals there, with doctors and nurses, etc. And so, and it's convenient from the expressway, so it's a good location.
It is. It's a great location. And the fact that it's right off the highway, you got the easy access there. Now, obviously, there are questions you'll have about the logistics of it all, especially when you have a parking garage. How are you going to, you know, with the influx of flow in, flow out, how are you going to make that work? But, that's what they pay the big boys to do. But because a lot of these empty parking lots are going to be part of this district. I mean, that's the whole point is a lot of these just open areas that are for normal parking now are going to be part of this whole thing. So there's going to be a lot of change when it comes to United Center, but a lot of that change is going to be for the better. And like I said, like a decade long multi-phase project. So housing is going to be very, very interesting to see because you're going to add some condo units and, you're kind of trying to revitalize that entire neighborhood. I mean, the Bulls and the Blackhawks, especially the Blackhawks, obviously have played there for nearly a decade and you haven't had much around it. And modern sports more than ever embraces that entertainment district Wrigleyville type vibe. You see other teams adapt that. The Packers did it with Lambeau Field. You're seeing it with other modern stadiums. The value of building
Detroit did that
around it.
too.
Detroit did that too. Yes.
Detroit. I mean, I remember when they built that, like you were like in the ghetto, and then there was just like a couple of blocks of, you know, when you were inside of it, you didn't know what was out other side of the block. But when you were outside, you were like, man, this is like an oasis in here. You're like, who wants to go there? And it helped revitalize that whole downtown Detroit. Detroit, you know, I shit on Detroit as much as anybody. And we went there last year and had a fantastic time. Phenomenal restaurants, cool hotel, great experience. Like
It's changed.
with my wife and kid. It was cool. We've talked about going back because it was, you could drive there, and we went to see Beetlejuice the musical, and because it at the time wasn't planning to come to Chicago that they had announced. So we drove up there. We got a hotel literally across the street from the theater, like 18 feet from door to door. And we went to a really, really nice restaurant. And and like, man, this was a cool trip, you know.
It goes to show what redevelopment projects can do, really revitalize a city. And it's an opportunity for Chicago to get even better.
Yeah. Should we talk a little baseball here?
I guess.
So, whatever minuscule hope that we all had that the Cubs would be buyers and be in a position, make the playoffs, went out the window with that Arizona series.
That was so just, it was like most of the problems, obviously, you didn't have the blown save type losses, but you had the losses where you just looked completely lifeless, completely, utterly lifeless. The Saturday game was just a joke. You showed absolutely nothing that night, and you looked like you did so many times in May and June. It's you need to do something insanely sustainable to have a chance, and you don't have the superstars to increase your odds of doing that. I mean, we are where we are now.
We're like 100 games into this season. We are who the record says we are. This isn't a team that can, oh, you know what? Just let them get healthy and they'll turn it around. This is who they are.
Yeah. And, granted, injuries have been tough on the Cubs, especially with some of their young pitchers. But you know what? Every team deals with injuries. We see it every year. And this year, you're seeing a lot of notable injuries around baseball. And, some teams are able to get over it. And some teams have the star power to get around it. And unfortunately, the Cubs don't have the star power to get around it. It sucks that we're in this position. And when we have to hear Jed Hoyer talking about buying for the future, not now, we're all like, yeah, we get it. We understand that's probably what you have to do, but we're pissed as hell that we're in this position.
I mean, it's just where we are. And, the players can be upset about it, but they're the ones not playing well. I went to the game yesterday and they won. It was nice. But
Brewers kind of gave us that one.
I was about to say is the Brewers lost that game. The Cubs didn't win. You had Assad just with no control that game. None.
6 walks, was it?
And you what 3 in a row? Like, and they went into passive mode. They didn't go into attack mode. They were like, oh, let's just let him walk us home. And eventually, like, he threw enough strikes. We're like, all right, now I got to swing. They weren't aggressive. Had they been aggressive, that could have been a rout. That game could have been absolutely a rout.
Yeah, you were one swing away from that being the case.
And the Cubs offensively, they scored a couple of runs, enough to win, but boy, it just, nothing sustainable at all.
No, it's not. And you got kind of luck. I don't want to say lucky. You were able to come back and win on Sunday against the Diamondbacks, and it was nice to see that. You got a clutch hit from Suzuki. That was cool. But you were a few outs away from being shut out for the second straight day. You were luckily able to pull it out, but your offense just went completely non-existent again.
Yep. And that keeps happening. It just keeps happening. And at some point, the Cubs are just going to keep firing hitting coaches. You can't just be like, oh, it's the hitting coach. It's the hitting coach, because you've had how many hitting coaches that you've gone through in the last 5 years? How many hitting coaches have they had?
More than I can count. More than I can count. But hey, it kind of reminds me of Bears offensive coordinators.
Kind of. So you're just like, you've at some point it's the players and it's the GM that put these players together. Is the Cubs, they're spending money, but they're the cheapest big market team in baseball. All right. Not White Sox, not included. The Cubs, they just, they've got to pony up and bring in somebody awesome. They just have to. They have to bring in a free agent that's a game changer.
Well, I mean, the one kind of nice thing is after this season, you're going to get a decent amount of money off the books. And there's rumors out there that Tyone could be on the trade block for a team that wants to shore up on some starting pitching. And, Tyone's the kind of guy where you're like, listen, you're not trading away an ace. You're not trading away a guy that's going to overpower you. But, for a team that's looking for another starter, that could garner some interest. Obviously, he's making a decent amount of money for the type of pitcher that he is. He's got a few years of control left, so you're probably not getting a return, but it grosses me out to say this, but if you're looking for even more ways to clear some money off the books, that would be a way to do it. But assuming this is Kyle Hendricks' last year, that's what, $16 million off. You'll be done paying Tucker Barnhart and Trey Mancini, who hasn't been on your team in like over a year now. So there is some money coming off the books, but you're going to have to be creative, I think, to really get this in a good direction. Your farm system's good. But again, right now, I don't look at the farm system and I don't see Chris Bryant like a cornerstone. I see some potentially good players, but you don't see the superstar. And that's the whole problem. You have a lot of good players, but not a great one. And when you have your bottom of the roster guys, it's harder to be elevated when you don't have superstar players.
I mean, it's fair. It's very fair. And we've been saying it for a long time. It's we need Jed to pony up. We need the Ricketts to open up the pocketbook. Like they make a lot of money. They make a lot of money. I mean, just on the baseball product alone, they make a lot of money. But all of that business that they own around it that aren't baseball income, that's a lot of money. Is invest that into the product.
It's just frustrating, you know. I mean, the Cubs are such an expensive experience. And you have Wrigleyville, where thousands of people go. You have a ballpark that's full every single game. You have an atmosphere that still is electric and tries so hard to will you to victory and believe. And we paid 108 years worth of dues. And yet here we are,
And
just
yes,
in no man's land.
yesterday there were so many Brewers fans there.
Was there?
Oh my God, there's so many Brewers fans. I mean, I wouldn't say it was a takeover, but man, they made a strong deposit.
Yeah, well, Milwaukee's only 90 minutes away.
And like I didn't see any fights or anything. It was pretty gracious, but it's tough to watch. Your team just get overrun by the rival.
What would you say was the ratio?
50-50.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. I mean, I don't know what the bleachers look like. Um, but we were in the 200 section, and the majority of people around us were Brewers fans, and when we left, like we were in a big Brewers group,
Hmm.
and I wore my Taylor Swift Cubs jersey.
Oh, nice.
And somebody's like, "That's cool. I got a Robin Yount jersey," and I was like, "That's cool. Robin Yount's cool."
Yeah, we have nothing against Robin Yount. That was in the American League
Yeah,
Brewers days. We have nothing against those guys. Raleigh Fingers, Robin Yount.
yeah. Pre National League, had no beef with them.
No, why would we? Heck, I didn't have a beef with them when I was a kid, before they actually got good. When they had like Ben Sheets and Bill Hall and Lyle Overbay, I had no reason to dislike them. They were never really a threat. And then all of a sudden you had Braun and Fielder, and you're like, oh shit, these guys are actually good now.
Oh, Braun the cheater.
Prince Fielder was a beast, though.
Yeah,
He was so good.
Prince Fielder. But you mentioned disappointment, and the other side of town is just an absolute disappointment. And you can't even be mad at the players. They've put together such a peewee baseball team. It's not meant to win.
I feel bad for Eric Fetty and Garrett Crochet. I mean, who knows how long they're going to be on the team, but they're pitching lights out every game, and they don't get run support, they don't get bullpen support. I was looking at Andrew Benintendi's numbers yesterday, and I was talking to a buddy about it with him, and the guy, I think he's got like the lowest WAR positionally. He's like a negative 1.6 F WAR. And he's their biggest signing ever in year 2 of a 5-year deal.
He's been brutal.
Like he was mediocre last year, which wasn't good for his contract, but mediocre would look 10 million times better than straight up awful like it's been this year.
It's funny because people will be like, "Oh, well, he's the biggest contract they've ever had." It just that's not saying a lot because they don't have any big contracts. So, you know, it pales in comparison to other teams' big contracts. There's other teams that have like, you know, that's that's just what they pay for a role player, and that's the Whites. That's just more about the White Sox than about Benintendi.
Don't they keep, and they keep like batting him second or whatever.
Well, because they have a joke of a manager. How,
Yeah.
how that dude is still employed.
Jerry.
Uh, but for the what I'm hearing is that everybody is open for business, that they're willing to trade pretty much anybody.
Yeah. That includes Crochet, like we've talked about before.
I mean, Crochet is definitely on the docket, and I still think it's dumb. All the White Sox fans are not happy about it. Um, but it is what it is. Jerry's gonna Jerry.
I wonder if he'll trade Crochet for another stack of land to put his district on.
He's playing Monopoly out there.
He's dressed as the Monopoly man.
He, we got it. He's driving around in a thimble.
Driving around in a thimble. It totally would be him.
Yeah, so I feel terrible because that team has just been so brutal, and they're still on pace to have like the most losses of all time.
Yeah, they're
Uh,
challenging what, the 62 Mets?
yeah. Um, if the pace that they're on, let's see, 265. Uh, uh, three. They are on pace for 119 losses, and I mean they're not winning games. They, uh, you know, they're 1-9 in their last 10.
And they were one strike away from winning last night,
Do you
but
know
that
what
didn't
their
happen.
Do you know what their road record is this year? I'll tell you, they have played 51 road games.
Have they even won 10?
They have won exactly 10. They're 10-41 on the road, and they're 17-34 at home.
Wow. They don't even have 30 wins and we're past the All-Star break.
Yep, yep. Um, the the next lowest number of wins on the road. All right, A's at 15. That's pretty bad, but Angels are 21. So they're significantly worse than most of these teams. Oak Marlins are bad too.
They're there with like the other well-known sellers, the A's, the Marlins,
I mean, let's see. We are like what, a week away from the trade deadline.
give or take. Yeah.
So Orioles, Yankees, they're in the buyer category. Um, I would imagine Red Sox may consider buying, but probably are going to stand pat. Rays probably standing pat. Blue Jays might sell, but you're gonna have to prize somebody away. Cleveland will be buyers. Like White Sox are definite sellers. Um, the A's are sellers. Angels are probably sellers.
Oh, they're most definitely sellers.
Let's see, Marlins sellers. The Rockies sellers. Like there's not a. I mean, there's some teams that might sell, but those are the rock solid sellers. There's not a lot of sellers out there. There's way more buyers this year. So I mean, that I'd hinted before that maybe the Cubs could make some moves for guys that have a couple years of control. Nothing major, but maybe some bullpen moves or something, some bench type players. But there's just there's too many buyers and not enough sellers that you're not going to get value. So
Right.
I'm fine if they want to sell off a few pieces that are not needed, but I do not want them to be buyers. So they're going to spend way too much for not enough player.
they had 5 more wins or so, this could be so much different. But they don't.
Yeah, I mean, the Cubs have, I'm not going to say solidified their bullpen, but their bullpen has improved. And if you had this bullpen for the whole season, they're still not a good team, but their record wise,
You'd be right in the race.
Their record would be right there, even with this mediocre bullpen and this mediocre roster.
And then you'd be able to call up a prospect, and you can kind of pull what the Diamondbacks did. But you lost too many games, I think.
Oh yeah, I think you're too far out of it, and there's too many teams in front of you. I mean, the only saving grace here is that you're not mathematically out of it, but you're not in it, and
you're in no man's land.
Gives the opportunity for you to play young players in later in the season.
Yeah. It's frustrating. There are a few good things you like to see. I mean, Michael Busch has been really, really good. Ian Happ's been good lately. Suzuki's been fine. Obviously, Shota Imanaga continues to be awesome. He was spectacular against the Diamondbacks. He pitched a scoreless inning in the All-Star game, as did Garrett Crochet. Got to give him his flowers too. But yeah, you're not complete enough.
Did you happen to see the play? I want to say it was a Phillies fan where he was at a road game and he caught a home run from the Phillies and everyone's yelling for him to throw the ball back. He had another ball in his pocket and he took the ball and palmed it and reached in his pocket and grabbed the other ball and threw that one out.
Wasn't that a common practice in the Wrigley bleachers?
I never saw it, but this guy got caught in 4K, which is funny.
Yeah, I mean, back in the old days, you could probably get away with it a little easier.
But it was funny to watch him do it. Like he was slick enough where when I watched it like the regular speed, I was like, what are they complaining about? And then I saw it in slow motion where it's blown up or like zoomed in, and I'm like, oh, that sneaky bastard.
That's why. That's funny.
What else do you want to talk about?
I don't know. I think I kind of covered everything I wanted to.
All right. Well, I think that's going to do it for this episode of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. I want to thank everybody so much for listening. Please hit subscribe however you listen to podcasts, whether it's iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, Google Play, Spotify, etc. Share this podcast with your friends, how we grow the show. Follow us on social media at Swerski Sports, Facebook.com/Swerski Sports, SwerskiSports.com, or ShyFanPat2 for Alex on Twitter /X, or AlexanderJakePatCreative.com for all the cool stuff that Alex does. And again, thank you guys so much for listening. And until next time, bear down.
Cubs win! What a lucky break! The good Lord wants the Cubs to win!
We thank Ditka and God for all they have provided.
Cubs win! Cubs win! Cubs win!
Oh, I don't want her. You can have her. She's a Packer fan. She can't fit in my van.
And she looks like number New Yorkers. Smoking crack is not legal on planes. Bears 31 to -7. The Bears. Oh, when the Bears go bearing down.